right, welcome back. We're about to advance into chapter 5 of our Mice and Mystics playthrough. This chapter is entitled Cat and Mouse, and the reason for that is our target now is Brodie the house cat, believe it or not. We've been studiously avoiding him whenever possible thus far, but now he has become our objective. And the reason for that is, if you recall, the end of last chapter, or during the course of the last chapter, we discovered King Andon and got a sense of Venestra's plan. The king is poisoned and unable to do anything. Meanwhile, she's developing weapons and hatching a plot to begin a war with the neighboring kingdom and have Andon to blame for it, making it look like it's his doing. So the mice decide they want to send a warning to the next door kingdom and let them know that they're about to be deceived. There might be a battle coming, but it's not their doing. Yada yada. But they're little mice, and there's no way they can get to a neighboring kingdom in any amount of time. And as a result, they have to come up with another plan. Now, we're not told in this chapter just exactly what that plan is, but we are told that it begins with defeating Brodie. So that's pretty much what the objective of this chapter is, and then we'll find out what the rest of the plan is in subsequent chapters once we've taken care of it. But the objective here is simply find and defeat Brodie. The victory condition, the mice win if they defeat Brodie before the hourglass marker reaches the chapter end marker. After defeating Brodie, if playing this chapter as part of an ongoing campaign, place the Brodie's Claw token, claw side up, in the party stash, and choose a party to read the following out loud. I'll save the fluff text. But basically, you get the Brodie's Claw achievement, for want of a better way to put it, and that's going to be useful for later chapters as just a signal that you have accomplished something that is a precondition for doing something else later. The defeat condition is nice and simple. If you run out of time or if all the mice are captured, game over, and nothing else to it. So really all you have to do is find Brodie and beat him. That might seem like it's relatively straightforward because thus far what you have is Brodie in specific locations, possibly more than one, and usually it's just a special surge. So you go in there, you trigger a surge, boom, there's your Brodie. It's actually a little bit more involved than that in this particular chapter. Okay, so we'll take a look at this. But first of all, you're going to start on page 6. You're going to select any 4 mice that you want. And then the encounter deck is, for the first time, not merely our 9 standard encounters. Okay, in fact, we're going to pick all 9 difficult encounter cards. We're going to shuffle them, and then we're going to place 2 randomly selected standard encounter cards on top of that pile. And as a result, what will happen is your first 2 encounter cards that you draw are going to be standard, and then subsequent encounter cards will be difficult. The other mechanic here that's interesting is you also are going to need to create a boss deck made up of 3 initiative cards. So what you're going to do is you're going to find the initiative cards for Captain Verst and Skitterclack, and you're also going to grab one of Brodie's initiative cards, and you're going to shuffle them up to randomize which one you're pulling. Now, of course, our objective is actually to pull Brodie if we possibly can. If we're pulling Verst or Skitterclack, that is going to mean that we are obviously having to fight and defeat them, but then we have to keep going and still go on and find Brodie. Now, of course, the next time we're in there, there's only 2 cards left, and then the next card is guaranteed to be Brodie if we're not successful in drawing him on the first 2 tries. Now, one thing that's worth noting is this is just to select and randomize when Brodie shows up. When Brodie does show up, you're still placing both of his initiative cards and dealing with him as normal. So the boss deck is not just because you're only drawing one of Brodie's cards into the boss deck. It doesn't mean that you're only having to deal with one of his encounter cards in the encounter itself. It's just in order to make it a 1 in 3 chance, as opposed to if you had used both of Brodie's cards, it would be a 1 in 2 chance with the other 2 bosses in there. You have the setup of the tiles is as follows. You're going to begin in the forge, and you are unable, if you note here, you're unable to go from the forge. I'll zoom in real close here. You can't go from the forge to the tunnels over here, so you are forced to use the flip space and bounce up to the Queen's Chamber instead. From then you can kind of move on. The oddity here, or the difficulty here, is that the different rooms here are going to have a lot of different special rules. And just to, I'll go through them each as they come up, but there's a couple of things to bear in mind here. And that is that what you're trying to do is get to Brodie, obviously, and there's 2 ways that that can happen, right? We have a boss deck, but when do you draw from the boss deck? Obviously, if you draw from the boss deck and you draw Brodie, Brodie shows up, you defeat him, you win the game. Okay. Now, interestingly, and this is really crucial, it just says, as the victory condition, you defeat Brodie before the hourglass marker reaches the chapter end. That's when you win the chapter. So actually, technically, you don't even have to clear that tile. You just have to beat Brodie. Now, that obviously can be real easy if you happen to get real lucky and randomly draw the catnip. That's great. But, of course, you're not going to count on that. So you have to kind of plan for the fact that you're going to be on purpose fighting Brodie. And Brodie's a bit of a tough nut to crack. So you might want to think about bringing somebody like Nez who can hit pretty hard and has a better chance of getting that wound through. Possibly somebody like Maginos who can use his Meeps ability to lower Brodie's defense. Or maybe somebody like Lily who has the defense reducing accurate shot ability. Things like this. They're all things to consider. But again, when does Brodie show up? Well, if you notice on the special rules, the special surges for some of the rooms here, not the Queen's Chamber, although there is something about the Queen's Chamber that we'll have to mention when we come back to it. But the dining hall is one. The special surge for the dining hall. For the first surge that occurs in the dining hall, draw the top card from the boss deck and place that boss normally. If any other surges occur, then you place 3 elite rat warriors. So you have a special surge here, and only the first one is draw from the boss deck. Now, if it's Brodie, cool, you fight him, you win, you're done. If you do not get Brodie, then you have to go on to the next room, which is the kitchen, in order to have essentially the same thing. For the first surge, draw the top card from the boss deck, place that boss normally. Otherwise, as subsequent surges, you get 3 elite rats. Similarly, in the Alchemist Chamber, special surge, you draw the top card from the boss deck, and then subsequent surges, you've got 3 rat warriors, non-elites. Okay, so there are 3 cards in the boss deck. There are 3 places where you can trigger surges and then draw from the deck and therefore face the boss. So if you manage to get through all of those rooms and trigger surges in all of those rooms, and remember, you can always do that by just sitting there and wasting time until eventually the cheese wheel fills up. So that's not hard to do. But of course, remember that every time you do it, the time is ticking away. But that's one way to guarantee that you're going to get Brodie. You go to all 3 of those rooms, trigger surges in all 3 of them. Eventually, you're going to get Brodie. You might get lucky and get him on the first try, in which case it's a real short chapter. The other thing, though, to bear in mind is that you can, if you search in the dining hall, perform the special search on the table, which is to get the dinner fork. You can, on the kitchen tile, go up onto the counter, use the dinner fork and your action, spend a cheese, and hopefully roll a star to use the fork to fling the cheese at the dinner bell, ringing the dinner bell, and therefore summoning Brodie. Now, one thing that's very important to remember with this is when you're on this tile, if you do that and summon Brodie, Brodie appears. If you trigger a surge, the surge still says draw the top boss deck, drop card from the boss deck. Now, obviously, it's a little bit funky because if you summon Brodie, you kind of have to grab his card out of that deck. But it seems like the rule would still say draw the top card from the boss deck. So then maybe you're now summoning Versed or Skitterclack on top of Brodie. That at least seems to be what these rules would imply if you read them as written. Okay, so that's enough babbling about the chapter overall, the mechanics. We're trying to find Brodie somehow. We got two ways of doing it: going in and triggering a bunch of searches, or going onto the counter and flinging cheese in a very risky, potentially way, to ring the dinner bell for Brodie. The other thing, though, that there is to bear in mind is in the Queen's Chamber, which is one of the tiles here. It's a difficult room for a number of reasons, and I'm planning to go in here, so I'll just save the description. You'll see it when it happens. But the reason I'm going in here is I want to deal with this special search, which is going to allow me to find Venestra's hairbrush. The reason for that is, one, it gives me an extra page to play with, and two, it is a very important item for one of the chapters later on in the campaign. If you have Venestra's brush, you're going to be able to do something cool with it. As we all know, traditionally, if you can get the hair of somebody, you can perform all kinds of magic off of it. So getting one of Venestra's hairs out of the brush is going to allow Maginos to do something clever. So that is going to be our initial objective. We're going to try to accomplish that. Then it's just wheels up and let's go find Brodie. That's pretty much it. Let's take a look at map and setup in map tool. Choose our party and get going. All right, so a couple of points here before we get going. Now, this is the setup as it appears in the book, I believe. And you'll notice again that you can't go from the forge to this tile. And the book's usually pretty good about showing the tiles in the setup so as to show you the side that you would see first. And that's just to, I guess, to avoid confusion, make it a little bit more clear. You might think you're going to this tile and then bopping up into the room above, but that's in fact not the case. The path that we're going to be following here is, in fact, we're going to be going from this flip space up into the Queen's tunnels. And you'll notice, and this is the rule, the fact that this is flipped over doesn't mean that you can't explore here. If you explore across an exit, if you're looking at the tile and it's the wrong color, you flip it over and see if it matches. Now, this is significant because there are times when the tiles are not necessarily known to you and you don't know what's over there and whether you can pass through it. But in this case, obviously it does match, so you can move on. And if you couldn't, well, you'd be screwed because there's nowhere else to go. So what you're going to be doing is bopping up into the Queen's Chamber, then moving over into the dining hall. And I have repaired this tile, little Photoshop magic here, to clear up the fact that the exit on this tile is here and not here as we had in that one chapter a while ago. As a result, you cannot move from this tile to this tile, even though there's an exit here, because there isn't in fact one here. And what will happen then is, after, of course, once you get here, you've got to go to the flip space. You got to go down into the tunnels, over into these tunnels, and then back up into the kitchen, and then over from there into the Alchemist's Chamber. Is it possible to go and flip? I didn't even add the other side to this tile in this case, because down here, even though you can pass from here to here, I don't believe that the tile, the Crystal Tunnels tile, which is the flip side of the Alchemist's Chamber, does have a matching exit. So even though there's an exit here, you can't actually go to the Crystal Tunnels. So because in order to go here, here, and here, and here, in order to get to the Alchemist's Chamber in the first place, you would have had to go through all three of those rooms, and those would be your only opportunities to find Brodie. I guess technically there's no rule against it in this game that says that you couldn't go down into the Crystal Tunnels and then come back up if you hadn't triggered a surge in all of those rooms and you hadn't rung the dinner bell. But what would possess you to ever want to do that, I have no idea. So for that reason, I don't even have the crystal tunnels on this particular map. All right, so that's the path here. So I'm going to back this up like so. I'm going to flip this over to make it more reflective of the path that we're going to be following. Actually, this one stays. And that should be pretty much where we want it to be. Now, the other point I wanted to make is the party that I've chosen to go with here. And this was not an easy decision. There's really nobody that I wanted to leave behind here. And some of these calls were very difficult. The two I feel easiest calls were to bring Maginos and Tilda. Tilda, for obvious reasons, she is one of my she's my best defender right now. She has 3 attack and 3 defense. She's my really good healer. And then on top of that, I've got a room coming up with a bunch of spiders, potentially, and difficult encounter cards where I might be getting spiders. So I need somebody with poison removing. There's a room up above where I'm going to be having people potentially getting webbed all the time. She's going to get free cheese every time they do. So it's kind of a no-brainer to bring her, at least now that she's got that warding staff. Maginos, similarly, with the Scorching Wand, is a beast. He's got meeps, so he can just throw a cheese at it every time. He's still firing the Scorching Wand for free. So he's lowering at least one thing's defense dice pretty much every time, and he's still rolling 3 ranged attack dice. And then he's got the option of Chain Lightning and all sorts of other goodness. Invisibility if he gets in danger. He's just going to be very useful. And again, the fear is when you run into Brodie, remember, he's got 2 cards, but he's only got 1 token. So if you apply Meeps to him, it's applying to the token, and therefore it's applying to both cards for Brodie. So even if you use it and take out one of Brodie's cards, which is great, it's actually still in effect. But Brodie's a tough nut to crack because he's rolling 4 defense dice. So whatever I can do to lower his defense dice, the better. So Maginos, again, was kind of a no-brainer. I was very tempted to want to bring Lily for a couple of reasons. One is, again, that accurate shot that would lower or could lower Brodie's defense. Problem is it would only lower it against her on that one shot, and she's still only rolling 2 dice, which is actually my other reason I kind of wanted to bring her along and keep wanting to bring her along, is just to get her an item better than that basic starting bow that she starts with. It's got a nice feature, but rolling 2 dice looking for bows, she just doesn't hit enough. Her output is just not there. So I'm trying to get her a better bow, and it just hasn't materialized yet, so I kind of wanted to do that as well. Nez as well, I really, the fact that he's rolling 4 attack dice versus Brodie was a big deal. I need heavy hitters to take Brodie out. And then on top of that, again, I mentioned there is that tile with the web, and he's immune to web. So I was very tempted to bring Nez as well, especially now that he's got a decent defense. I hated leaving either of these 2 behind, but I feel like it was outweighed by the following considerations. Colin, first of all, with the Ring of Cat Strength, is hitting as hard as Nez and is defending as well as Nez, even when he's sharing the same space. Now, he doesn't have First Aid, and he doesn't have Set Trap, but he has Give Order, he's got Inspire, he's got Battle Leader. So he's got ways of helping out that go beyond that, and then on top of that, he does hit as well as Nez. So if it came down to, I guess basically it came down to picking Nez or Colin, and the real only downside for Colin here is he's not immune to web. But the web on the 1 tile is only when you're rolling 1s. It's not the end of the world because you can clear it. Plus, Tilda gets a cheese out of it, and I just felt like Give Order was kind of the deal breaker for me there, especially with Maginos now rolling for free his 3 dice. Filch, I'm bringing along for a couple of reasons. One, of course, is his typical, he's a good ranged attacker. Right now, he's a better ranged attacker than Lily is. He can, in a pinch, use the daggers if he really has to. He could snag Colin's ring at times and bump his attack. He's got the find ability. He's got all sorts of things going on for him. He's got the energy rush if I really need to try to hit again. Dodge can be very tactically useful. But more to the point, there is a special search coming up in one of the rooms where you can search and find the disguises. And I guess this was more than anything what caused me to bring Filch rather than Lily, was just the fact that he can search on one special tile. It does require the scamp to do it, so it had to be him. But you can find the disguises, and that could potentially eliminate an encounter with 4, 5, 6 rats. And that's a big deal in a chapter where time is going to be at a premium. It might wind up not even helping at all, but I felt like he was the best choice just because of that. That was kind of the deal breaker for me. So that was my thought process there. I just kind of want to explain that. I did hate leaving either Nez or Lily behind, but I think this is going to be a pretty good party for the chapter. We'll just have to kind of go ahead and see how it goes. And remember, I have already built my boss deck, and I have already built my special encounter deck with the 2 standard on top and the 9 difficult down below. So let's just double check the rules for the Forge and then get going. So the rules for the Forge are as follows. First of all, this is the tile where you have the disguises available for a scamp. And I've got a scamp, so I'll go ahead and try to get that. The special surge is going to be 2 rat warriors. And then it doesn't look like there's a special setup for this, but, and you always have to check this, there is a special setup for this first tile that is described not for the tile, but instead for the overall tile setup. Now, I'm not really sure why they do that. I kind of wish they had been more consistent about this. But we are placing all 4 mice on the piled chain space, which is our entry space, and then placing 3 elite rat warriors normally. And that is our starting setup. So, as a result, we are not drawing one of those first encounter cards. We are just placing 3 elite rat warriors. So we'll add them to the initiative. And you put them on for ranged minions, you put them on the furthest space. Now, if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, this is the furthest space. You could argue some of the adjacency here and argue that this is also 4 away, but I'm not going to be that anal about it. At best, that would give you a tie. I'm just going to go ahead and put them all here. Now, importantly for ranged minions, you're not spreading them out. You're putting them all in the furthest entry space. So that is where they go. And we'll go ahead and shuffle up the initiative. And it looks like we're in pretty good shape for the first round here because Tilda gets to go first. And I think what she's going to do is go ahead and roll on up there and start swinging away. And hopefully take one of these guys out. Let me get rid of this guy here because he's bugging me. All right, let's see what Tilda can do. A whole lot of nothing. She gains a piece of cheese, and that is it. Off to a good start. Maginos here, I think, will do the following. To try to make sure that we're getting at least one of these rats off the excuse me, off the tile here. I think what we want to do is have him grab that cheese that she just got, spend that cheese on Meeps, and we'll go ahead and put that on there. Yeah, I didn't add him in there. Excuse me again. We'll add the Meeps token there. And then he's going to fire at that same rat. Might as well try to take him out. So that rat's now only rolling 1 defense dice. Maginos with the Scorching Wand is rolling 3 attack dice. We'll see what he gets. He gets just 1 hit, but again, this guy with Meeps is only rolling 1 defense. he still nevertheless did block it. So now we're down to Filch, and I think what Filch is going to do, because we really want to get one of those guys off here, I think he's going to trade with Colin and snag that ring again, equip that ring so that he can move up here, and I'm going to share the space with Tilda to, well, I have to in order to do a melee attack. But even if I was doing ranged, I would still move up here to try to spread any potential damage out. He's going to attack that same rat warrior. He is above him in initiative, so he's rolling against no defense dice, and he's rolling now with the ring. He's rolling 3 melee attack dice. So I just need 1 sword on these dice, and that's a dead rat. And of course I didn't get it. So I rolled... yeah. I rolled swords when I wanted bows, and bows when I wanted swords, and that's kind of par for the course for me. Alright, what the rats are going to do here is respond. So the first one will go after Tilda. He's rolling 3 attack dice. He only hits once. She gets her 3 defense, gets a cheese and blocks it. The next rat is rolling, again, his 3 attack dice, getting 1, but he's going after Filch now because it's the closest who hasn't been attacked yet. That's Filch. He only rolls 2 defense against that. He does block. And the third, because now both of the 2 closest have been attacked, I guess he goes back for Tilda because she's higher in initiative. He's attacking, hitting once, and she is rolling to block and gaining cheese and successfully blocking. So that could have been a whole lot worse. As a result of all their attacking, I gained 2 cheese. And they didn't put any on the wheel, so that's not too bad. The only downside now is they did get a turn, so they're now above Filch in initiative, but Colin gets to roll in here now. Take that ring back from Filch. Give me that back, you thief. And let's try to stab that guy who is still rolling 1 less defense die because of Meeps. He's rolling now 4 swords against him. That is somebody who, didn't need to have Meeps on him to get killed. So that guy is dead. Colin doesn't gain any benefit from that. Oh, and I did forget to give him a piece of cheese for not being first when we shuffled in the initiative. So let's go ahead and give him that now. And that's Colin's turn. We come now to Tilda. She's going to try to stomp one of the rats. And she rolls only 1 hit. Yeah, he's rolling 2 defense. He does block it. And so we come to Maginos, who will grab one of those cheese from Tilda and do the same thing. Spend that and put that on this guy, and then he will fire away at him with his 3 dice. He hits once, rolls a cheese, getting 2 cheese out of it, and this guy's rolling only 1 defense die thanks to Meeps. He does not block the attack, does not cheese the wheel, and it's a dead rat. So things are going pretty well for us so far. We have 1 rat left on the table. We're nowhere near a surge. And really we just need to take him out, get those disguises, and get out of here. But he gets to attack. He's going after Tilda. And he does put a cheese on the wheel. I spoke too soon. And hit twice. Now she is still rolling 3 defense and blocking 1. So she's taken a single wound as a result. It's Filch's turn now. And I think what I'm going to have him do is search, because again, I do want to get those disguises. If I don't search with him and I attack instead, it might take a cheese off of the wheel. But in order for him to be able to search again, I'm going to have to tarry in this tile and wait for his turn to come around again, so that cheese is going right back on it. So I might as well just try to have him search instead. But I want to check out the cheese situation. Oh, actually, no, I don't. I was thinking he might need to use his find ability, but the whole point of this was to do the special search. So he just simply fails to do that. And I think Colin's going to try to swing away and keep us safe on this tile here. That's 3 hits. That's a dead rat. We'll just see if he cheesed the wheel. He did not. So that guy is gone. And we've got 1 wound on our healer. We do have a decent amount of cheese. And the next room's not going to be super great. So I think I might have him give a piece of cheese to Tilda, so that when her turn comes around, she can heal herself for that wound. Now the downside here, of course, is that she does still have to spend 2 in order to use Major Heal, and it's only curing 1 wound. But I don't relish the idea of moving on wounded when I can possibly help it. So I think she's just going to spend those 2 cheese to heal herself. And then we come to the elite rats are gone. Come to Maginos. He's got really nothing to do except search. He finds something. Finds a leather breastplate, which is unfortunately no good to anybody. So he will turn that in for a piece of cheese, which he will then give to Colin so that he has something for give order just in case. And I'll go ahead and move him towards the flip space. I didn't mean to do search, I meant to move, but that means he can go 3 spaces. And then Filch is going to have to search again and not find anything. So Colin will hang out and search. Everybody else is finding something. But shitter golem. Potentially interesting. That could make Maginos into a real tank on his turn. And what's interesting is, even in Cheddar Golem form, he can still use Meeps. So we're definitely hanging on to that. He's going to roll his movement. He can go here. He can trade that over to Maginos, who's the only one who can use it. And he is not going to move us on. I mean, he can't, after searching he can't, but the reason he searched is he didn't want to, because we want Filch to get that search. Now Tilda will search because she has nothing else to do, and I'll just move her down here. Maginos has nothing to do. Filch will search and find something. Alright, so he can go into the deck and grab the disguises. Now you notice I mean, you never want to add cheese to the wheel, especially going into the next room, which is not super easy. But at the same time, you got to remember those disguises could potentially be saving me most of, if not all of, an entire encounter from one of these encounter cards. And as a result, it's probably worth 1 or 2 cheese on the wheel to make that happen, because in a fight like that fight alone is probably going to put a couple of cheese on the wheel anyway. So at least that was my rationale for it. And I shouldn't have had Tilda selected there. That was obviously Filch doing it, so I'll just trade that. He's the one who has it. Not that it really matters, because it actually goes to the party stash. So let me do that. I'll trade that to the party stash for the disguises, like so. But that was Filch doing the searching. He now has searched. He comes down here, and Colin moves us on the flip space to the next tile. So we'll go ahead and put our guys on the flip space. We will clear our search markers, clear the chat, and bop over to the rulebook and check out the rules for this tile. Okay, checking out the rules here. Another thing to note really quickly is that the presentation here again is a little bit loopy in that, you know, they usually put the tiles somewhat in order, or at least one possible order that you could come in, but as I indicated, you have to go from the forge to the Queen's Chamber. There's really no other way, given the arrangement of the tiles, that you could possibly go. So why did they put the kitchen tunnels and then the dining tunnels next before presenting the Queen's Chamber? No idea. But don't let it deter you. Follow the rules for how the tiles connect. And I mean, at least as far as I can tell, the Queen's Chamber has to be the second tile. Okay, so first of all, special setup. You still are drawing and adding an encounter card. It is going to be a standard encounter card because it's the first card we're drawing, which is the good news. The bad news is we're adding a spider to whatever is listed on that card, and most likely it's not going to already have a spider on it. So the rule that says that if you run out of figures you don't need to place the minions will not apply. So we're going to have a standard encounter plus a spider, which is somewhat nasty. We're still going to place them all as normal, so we'll follow the rules for those. And then the story moment is when the mice explore the Queen's Chamber, you read aloud, and it basically says that they come in here, they slip through the secret door, they come in here, and they're like, ooh, it's the Queen's Chamber. Venestra has been in here and has sullied it, and yada yada. But if they go up onto the vanity, they find her personal artifacts. There's also an elaborate clockwork device that is tick-tocking ominously. There's a special rule here that involves webs everywhere. And basically, while there are minions on this tile, if a mouse rolls a 1 for movement, that mouse becomes webbed. So this is, of course, where Nez is kind of handy. But yeah, the idea here is if you're in the middle of battle, you can't tread as carefully as you otherwise would. You can get ensnared in the webs. And it's mechanically kind of like the old crow in the courtyard. If you roll a 1 when you move and you don't have a choice, you have to roll for movement at the start of your turn to see if you're webbed or not. There is a special search. This can be performed by anybody, but it is for Venestra's brush. It must take place on the vanity. And when you find it, not only is that important for a later chapter, but it does allow you to advance the chapter end by 1 page, which is of course good. It gives you more time in the chapter. The special surge is 1 spider added to the vanity. So if you already have a spider on the map, that obviously would not come off. But if you have killed the spider and then you trigger a surge, boom, you get another spider. So something to be aware of. That looks like all the rules for this. So let's bop over, draw our card, and get going. Alright, here we are back in the Queen's Chamber on the map, and the only thing really there is for us to do is draw the first of those standard encounter cards that we have at the top of the deck and see what it is that we're facing here. And we've got 2 rats and 3 roaches plus mouse traps. Now, the mouse traps are not going to do anything here, but we do have 3 roaches and 2 rats. However, we also have the disguises from the previous tile, and as a result, we are not going to be drawing or placing those rats on the map. We're also, as I mentioned, not going to be dealing with the mouse traps. So we just have 3 roaches, and then of course the special rule for this tile is to also place the spider. Now, that then means that we're facing 3 roaches and a spider as our encounter, and I read that as a single encounter. It says you add the spider to the encounter, I believe is kind of how it's worded, but even if it's not worded that way, that seems to be the intent. And the reason I'm mentioning that is when you are placing minions on the map, it specifies the order in which you place them, and it starts with ranged enemies, which there aren't any, and then it says to add the large enemies that you're facing and add them to the closest tile, the closest entry space to the mice. So that would be right there, right next to us. You then add small melee or melee enemies, and you would add them as normal. And because there are 3 of these bad boys, we're going to place 2 up here and 1 down here to spread them out as much as we can. And this space is a little bit further away. So that's why we're dealing with it like that. And yeah, so that's our encounter. Let's shuffle up the initiative and see where that lands us. And the spider gets to go first. Isn't that lovely? Okay, looking at this map and where we're positioned, this is another one of these funny places where you could argue that because you can span the space that they're adjacent. Arguably they're not because of this corner. It really kind of depends on how you prefer to place enemies and such. I'm just going to go ahead and play it that you can attack these 2 spaces, so that spider's not going to move anywhere. It's just going to attack the highest in the initiative. That would be Tilda with his 2 attack. He's hitting once there, and she would be defending and blocking it and actually gaining a cheese in addition. So the spider did nothing but give me cheese, and I think Tilda's going to retaliate. Now, the rule here is, again, on this tile, we have to, and I'm reading this to be the same as the old crow. So at the start of my turn, whether or not I'm planning to move, I think I have to roll move and see if I'm webbed as a result. So her movement is a 1, and therefore she is webbed. And so now she gets cheese if an ally takes a condition, but I don't think that it applies if she gets a condition, because it's empathy. It's not, anytime. Anyway, she, in virtue of the fact that these I just declared to be adjacent, I'm going to say that she can go ahead and attack, and I think she will because she's swinging away with 3 dice. And she could actually borrow Colin's ring to do it if I wanted to be really cheesy. But yeah, let's go ahead and just see what she can do natively. She gets another cheese, and she does hit once. So she is up to 2 cheese, and she landed 1 hit. Let's see if this guy with his 3 defense manages to block it, and he did not. That's interesting. So he's already taken a wound. Go Tilda. But we come already to the roaches, and I'm realizing I forgot to give Colin his cheese for not going first, so I'll do that now. But we'll see how far the roaches can move. Only 2 spaces. 3 spaces, so he can reach. Now he too is going to attack Tilda. She's been attacked, but not attacked this turn. So he's going to attack Tilda and hit once. She will defend and block and gain a cheese. And then this guy will roll his movement, only 1 space. So I'll just say, because they ignore red lines, he's just going to plunk down here. And that's the roaches. So Colin now can take a turn, and he also needs to roll to see if he's webbed. He is not. So he could move, and I think I want to keep him, even though he's got a 5, which means he could get up onto that stool, because remember, I want to get up here, and I want to get to the Vanesta's brush. But I also want to take that spider out as soon as I possibly can. So I think what I'm going to do is, and I want to use that disguises before I forget, because we used them up here. Those go away. I think he's just going to stay here, and he's going to attack the spider. If he kills the spider, then he could move up onto the stool. So we'll just go ahead and try that. And he is gaining 1 cheese and hitting 3 times. So this guy's rolling 3 defense, but if he rolls only 1 shield, that's actually a dead spider. So we'll see what he does. He does roll 2 shields, meaning 1 got through. So it is a wounded spider. And I think between Filch and Maginos with Meeps, I'm going to say Colin is going to bounce up here with his 5 movement to try to get a head start on the brush. And then we're going to come to Maginos, who will also need to roll his movement. He is not webbed, but he's most definitely going to spend a cheese on Meeps to put Meeps on the spider there. And then he's going to attack that spider with his 3 ranged attack. Glory be to the Scorching Wand. And that is 2 cheese and 2 hits versus this guy's 2 defense. So once again, he needs 2 shields to stay alive, and he got only 1. And that is a dead spider. So go ahead and remove that. And Maginos rolled a 4 for movement, which means he can shuffle off over this way. And I think he will, because actually he's not, well, anyway, I won't get into the details on that, but I'm just going to move him over here, try to, once again, to get him up onto the table here. And I think Filch is going to play that same game and try to put as much distance as we can between us and these guys while trying to kill that guy. And we'll see what his movement is. He gets a 6, so he can definitely get up onto the stool. And he's going to fire his bow at the roach down here. And he gains a cheese, and he hits twice because of the accurate bow. So that's a dead roach. And the roach did not cheese a wheel, which means Filch gains yet another cheese, which is pretty cool. And then we come to Tilda, who is webbed. Now, she rolls her movement, I guess, at the start of her turn. But it's kind of a moot point because she didn't roll a 1. But I guess if she's already webbed, then it doesn't matter. Now, the rule on webs says that you spend an action to clear it, and you can't move until you do, but you can still attack. So her option really is, do I attack that roach and stay where I am, or do I try to move away? And I think she's just going to stay here. I don't really care too much if she's webbed right now. If she can take that roach out, and even if she can't, these guys are both coming after her, and she's got plenty of cheese and good defense. So I think she's just going to try to crush that roach with her boomstick. And all she got was 2 more cheese, but remember, those are basically hit points versus roaches. So she's in real good shape and not too worried about anything right now. This roach will move to the closest. He can't fail. This roach can fail to get into her space, but they're both going to be able to attack her. So I'll roll them in turn. That's 1 hit and a block. And this is a hit and a cheese on the wheel. And a block. It's Colin's turn now, and I think what we want to do is try to get this brush up here. So he's going to roll his movement. He can get up there, and he's going to roll his search, and he finds it. So again, I'm not going to draw a search card. I'm going to go ahead, and I actually have this listed as a story achievement because this is something that you track on a campaign for future reference. Good job, Colin. Okay, he moved and acted. That's his turn. Imaginos, we'll see if he's webbed, and he's not. And I think what he's going to do is start firing away. I do have a good bit of cheese here, and I would like to kill these guys without cheesing the wheel any further. So I think I'm going to spend a cheese on Meeps versus this guy. And then fire away at him. Gaining 2 cheese. And hitting once. And in virtue of Meeps, that's a dead roach. Come now to Filch, who I think is going to do the same thing. He does need to roll... Oh, sorry, Imaginos, before he finishes his turn, will move us up towards the exit space. And Filch now has to roll his movement. He does get a 1, so he's webbed. That's unfortunate. Because I was hoping he'd kill that roach and then we have plenty of time to get out of here. But I think now what he's going to do is spend his turn unwebbing himself. Because I don't want to go into the next room and have everybody webbed. Because your conditions go with you. So Imaginos could explore and everybody would go with him, but they'd stay webbed on the next tile if they are webbed. So I think Tilda, again, because of her cheese buffer, is going to spend her action to get rid of her webbed. And then I think she'll scurry, and I guess I roll movement again for that. It's not a scurry, it's her move, but I guess I roll. It's a little unclear if you have to do it at the start of your turn and if you started out webbed. I would say that, again, because of, it seems like parity with the crow. And it's very explicit with the crow that you have to roll it at the start of your turn no matter whether you're planning to move or not. I would say the same thing here. the start of your turn, you roll the die to see what your movement rating is. That would trigger whether you get webbed or not. Now, that doesn't use up your move. It just shows you how much you could move if you spend your move to move. So I think you could, even if she had rolled a 1 here, she could have still spent her action and then moved. That's how I'm reading it anyway, but it's a moot point again because she didn't roll a 1. So she's going to go 1, 2, 3. And I think that's as far as she's going to go. The reason being, she'll go here. The reason being, this guy's going next. If she moves further away, she'll attack Filch instead of her. She has a better defense, and there's really no advantage to being up here instead. So she'll go there on the off chance that he rolls a 1 for his movement. That's pretty much it. So that's her turn. And we come now to the Roach, who does not roll a 1, so he, again, will go towards the closest that's highest in initiative. So he's chasing Tilda and whiffing on his attack. We come to Colin, who's got nothing to do but roll his movement, close the distance. 1, 2, 3, 4, and he'll swing away. That's a dead Roach who did not cheese the wheel. All right. So we've cleared the room, and importantly, what happens now is the rule you want to remember for this room is the webbing and the roll to see if you get webbed. It only takes effect if there are enemies on the tile. So as soon as you clear the room, I guess you're calm enough that you can kind of negotiate the webs without concern. So really, I think what we want to do is just have Maginos search, because Filch can't fail to move us on. You didn't find anything, but then Filch will go ahead and just bop us over, and we'll go ahead and see what happens in the next tile. Now, we have the dinner fork up here on the table, and that's going to be a big concern for us as we come in here. But, yeah, we got out of there. We're all set. I don't think I missed anything. Yeah, so we'll clear the search markers. We'll clear the chat. And let's bop over to the storybook and see what's what. Not an awful lot going on in the dining hall. We've got a whole tile note and a table space only note. The table space is the special search for the dinner fork, and we definitely want to try to get that, because that is how we are going to guarantee that we can get Brodie in the next room. The other is a special surge, and this is where the boss deck starts to come into play. This is the first room. And again, if we get lucky and we draw Brodie here, we can just defeat him here, and it's actually chapter over. We've won. So we'll just have to see how that goes. But we are going to intentionally trigger a surge here. Whether it happens in combat organically, fine. But if it does not, then we will probably just tarry here and trigger it by waiting, because we want to make sure that the we draw from the boss deck and have a chance of getting Brodie early. And if we fail to do that, then we will have to bop into the kitchen and deal with the dinner fork and the trying to draw Brodie by ringing the dinner bell and all of that stuff. But maybe we won't have to get there. We'll see. That's pretty much it for this room. Let's bop back to the map. All right, here we are in the dining hall. Again, we want to try to get up to the table eventually, which is one reason why I placed us here instead of here. It seems like it'd be a little bit easier to get up to that chair, which, because we don't have the fishhook and line or anything like that, we don't have the teleport scroll or anything like that. We really don't have much of anything in terms of any special items or anything like that. So what we're going to have to do is try to climb our way up this way. But first things first, we got to see what our encounter card is. So go ahead and draw this. This is the second of our standard encounter cards. And we are getting more roaches. Okay. Once again, the mouse traps are irrelevant here, and we have a special surge, so the centipede here is also going to be irrelevant. All right, 5 roaches it is. That's a relatively straightforward encounter. We'll go ahead and add them to the initiative. And we need to scatter them as much as we can among the minion entry spaces. And I'll put one up here, an extra one, because that's far away from me. We'll shuffle the initiative. And the roaches are going first, which in virtue of that means Colin is not. So he gains a piece of cheese. And unfortunately the roaches get to just dive in and have at us. And Maginot is first, but I believe he does have a bit of a cheese buffer, so it's not the worst thing in the world. This guy could move in here if there was room, but there isn't, so he's just moving next to us. Swinging away. Maginot is losing at least 1 cheese. He is in fact losing 2 cheese eaten by that roach, which fortunately is not a greedy roach. This guy here can roll his movement, and again, they ignore the red lines, so he just bops down here, and he's going to attack Tilda, hitting twice. Tilda blocks none of it, so she loses 2 cheese. These are hungry little roaches here. This guy can move 3 spaces. We're looking at 1, 2, and 3s up on the table. That's not adjacent. This guy can move 2. We'll go 1 and 2. This guy here can move 1. And we finally get to go. Well, I think I want to try to hang on to cheese as much as I can in virtue of it being hit points versus roaches. But Maginot being first is also a bit of a concern here, so I think I want to try to get him away from the bad guys as much as he can, and especially since there's no real reason to have him be close anyway. So I think I'm going to have him move like so, and like so, and then attack this roach with his Scorching Wand. Hitting twice, so that's a guaranteed kill. That doesn't cheese the wheel. There we go. And yeah, that's Maginot's turn, unless I want to have him... I think at this point I will have him spend 1 cheese to put meeps on this guy. And then Tilda, I think, is going to move up and try to make herself a juicy target. She's also going to trade some cheese from Colin. And she will one, two, three, four spaces, and then she'll attack this guy right here. She gains a cheese and hits only once, which this guy does not block. So that's a dead roach. And yeah, then Cullen on his turn is, I think, well, let's see how far he can move. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'll have him move here and attack that roach. He gains 2 cheese and hits twice, meaning once again guaranteed kill. That does not cheese the wheel. Dice are with us so far, and that's Colin's turn. We come to Filch, who I think will try to shoot this roach right here. Well, let's see what he can move first of all. He can move 5. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, he can't get up onto the chair. So if we can kill this guy, let's go 1, 2, 3. I don't want Maginot to be... Okay, so here's what I do. Before I move, I'm going to shoot this guy and see if he lives or not. That's 2 hits versus 0 defense, so that's a dead roach. And that's a cheese to Filch. Okay, now he can move pretty freely. This guy is 1, 2, 3 away from Maginot. He's 1, 2 away from them. So Filch is going to move 1, 2, 3, 4, and share that space with them because Tilda will be the target of the roach's attack. So that roach can move into the space and attack Tilda. He hits once, which she blocks. We come to Maginos. And I think Maginos at this point is not too worried. He's going to fire at that roach, hitting 3 times. Blocks once. That is a dead roach. We killed all 5 without putting a single piece of cheese on the wheel. But we want to get up there and grab that fork. And we also want to try to stay scattered a little bit because in the event that our surge is Brodie, we would like him to not pounce on all of us. We have some time because Brodie's only coming once we cheese the wheel here. But I also am thinking that the other possibilities are Verst or Skitterclack from the boss deck. And I'm going to keep Maginos here because that way he's going to be relatively safe because the enemies are coming over in these spaces. And he'll be able to kind of stay out of the way, which I would like him to do. So he's just going to linger there. That's his turn. And the roaches are gone. Okay, Tilda. I think what I'm going to have Tilda do is move over here and then execute a regular search. She finds something. And it's the levitate scroll, which could be handy later on. Could be slightly handy here, but I think I'll save it in case I need it in a more dire situation, maybe in the kitchen. And Colin can't move very far. So I'm just going to leave him where he is and have him search. He finds something. No. I am not going to have him search. I take that back because I want Colin to come up here and get the dinner fork. So I'm going to take that back. I haven't drawn anything, so it's all good. He's just going to clamber up onto the chair, and then Filch on his turn is going to search because he's got the find ability. So if I'm going to have somebody go up here for the dinner fork, I'm going to have it be Colin. And Filch on his turn, I don't know that he wants to go anywhere. I guess there's no reason not to come up here and share that space with Colin. So he'll bounce up there too, and now he will search. He finds something, and he will spend his 2 cheese on find. Oh, really? Okay. Well, we've got the summon cat ability. That's interesting. Summon cat scroll. Well, that would be one way to get out of this room real quick. But here's the thing. If I summon Brodie right now, I'm going to have, because this is Filch's turn and he can't use this scroll, we're going to go up a tick in the initiative. We're going to add a piece of cheese. And that boss deck is still there. So this is actually an interesting question. If you have Brodie in the room with you, and you draw from the search from the boss deck, I guess if you draw Brodie, you ignore it. But if you don't, we could be facing Brodie and Verst or Brodie and Skitterclack. That wouldn't be the best thing ever. But one option would be if I do face Verst or Skitterclack here and defeat them, I could then summon Brodie and not have to worry about the kitchen. So what I'm thinking is, if I do that, I mean, because the Clockwork Grenade I can't use because I'm not a Tinkerer. Tail Link is only useful against non-large and non-boss minions, so all of those bosses in that deck would not qualify. So this is going to be useless to me unless I get a regular Surge enemy in here. So I will take the Summon Cat Scroll, and I will trade that over to Colin, who can use it. And Colin is going to think about using that in the event that after we trigger the Surge, we'll see where we're at. I think that's what I'm going to do, because after Filch's turn, boom, we're up to 4 on the cheese wheel, and I don't know that I want to fight both Brodie and, say, Skitterclack at the same time, if I don't have to. So Maginus is just going to sit here and roll his search, not find anything. He's got nothing better to do but hang out. Tilda, likewise. Colin will not be able to fail to move up here, and then he will execute his search and not find the dinner fork. But actually, now that I think about it, don't care too much, because the dinner fork was really important to try to summon Brodie, but that's a moot point now. That's interesting. Okay. So now I actually have some positioning to think about. So instead of moving up there, well, I already did it, but what I should have done is move down here. Yeah, I'll deal with that. I got time. Filch will move this way. 1, 2, 3. Cover up that space. And then we come to Maginus. We put a cheese on the wheel. Maginus will search and find something. And it's the Mystic Blade. When attacking with the sword, any sword star rolled count as 2 successes instead of 1. Now, importantly, that's not any sword star, and well, it is the one face of the die that has the sword and star on it, but not the one that has the sword star shield. That's been discussed in the FAQ, and as such, this is basically equivalent to Colin's sword, except 1 time in 6 it does double damage. So it's a 33% damage increase over Colin's basic starting blade. So it's nice, but it's by no means the one I keep going forward or anything like that. I don't anticipate Maginus using that, honestly. I think he'd probably... because he only has 1 battle. So if he attacks with that, he's still only attacking for 2 dice. Whereas he would be attacking for 3 with ranged anyway. So I think he's just going to discard that for a cheese. Tilda now, I think, is going to move like so. 1, 2, 3, 4. Colin on his turn is going to move like so. 1, 2, 3. And that puts him on that space, and he can search. Find something. Play immediately. Move the hourglass marker back 1 space if possible. Place this card back in the search deck, then shuffle. Okay, so he can't discard this for cheese because it's not like an item he can keep. And I am on page 1. So while this is normally a really, really nice card to get, in this particular instance, it's not helping me. It just came too early. But what are you going to do? Now, the reason I maneuvered like this is the bosses are either Brodie, Brodie, Skitterclack, or Versed. I would like to, as much as possible, try to force them to fight Tilda. So here's the deal. If it's Brodie, he can go anywhere. He goes on the minion entry space that is closest to the mice, and if they're tied, you get to choose. So I can choose to put him here under Colin, who has a decent defense. Plus he's close to Tilda, who can come in and kind of run interference for him. If it's Skitterclack, the only open space would be right here, and again, he's facing Tilda, our best defender. If it's Versed, you place him on the entry space that is furthest from the mice, which is again right here, so he's going after Tilda, our best defender. So that was the idea, plus I'm scattered around the tile, which is very important for Brodie, because it's harder for Brodie chases to reach everybody, and it's at any point he uses Brodie pounces, he's only hitting one guy. So that's pretty much it. And that's Colin's turn. Filch has nothing he can do. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit this. We're going to trigger the surge. And as a result, we'll clear the cheese wheel. We will go up a page, although we're not too worried about that right now. Because I think actually when we got Fenestra's brush, I believe we were supposed to tick that all the way up to 7. But even if we're at 6, we got 4 pages to go, so I'm not too worried about it. And then we just draw from the boss deck and see what we get from that. Go down to our boss deck and draw a boss card. And it is Brodie Pounces. He's arrived to menace our heroes. Okay. Well, we know what that means. That means we place Brodie. And again, we place him, I believe, on the closest entry space to the mice, which is either here, here, or here. They're tied. When you're placing, it doesn't list initiative as a tiebreaker. I think you're allowed to choose. So I believe we can go ahead and put Brodie. First of all, we'll add Brodie. We need to randomize which one goes into the initiative first here. So actually, no, we don't, because we're shuffling initiative. So we add both to the initiative. And we'll put his token down underneath Colin. We'll send it to the back so that he doesn't obstruct our view here. So Brodie appears to menace Colin. We didn't need to use that scroll, but we are going to shuffle the initiative. Colin is not going first, so Colin gains a cheese. And Tilda is getting to go first before we run into Brodie Chases. And I think what she's going to try to do is do her level best to try to kill that one initiative card. And again, when you're facing Brodie, you need to be, next to or on his token. He's large, but he doesn't take up space. He rolls a crap load of dice, but he doesn't add to the cheese wheel. But he's potentially nasty in terms of his damage output. What's really nice, though, is I get 3 mice to try to do something before I get Brodie Pounces, and Pounces is the nasty one if you're grouped up. Chases, depending on how he rolls, he'll probably be able to hit all 3 of these guys, maybe only 2 of them, the 2 closer, but he's not also going to be able to get Maginos in there. So I'm not as worried about Chases, but Pounces is really, now that I know he's coming, I could plan to scatter myself, and Pounces becomes much less scary when you can do that. So I think our target is going to be the Brodie Chases card first. And again, to defeat Brodie, you have to defeat each one of the cards, each of which has only 1 hit point, but it's rolling 3 melee battle and 4 defense. So he's a bit of a tough nut to crack in terms of hitting him. But let's see. Let's see what Tilda can do. I think that Chases is going to be able to reach her anyway. Unless actually where she is, it would be able to reach her automatically. So she is just going to bop down here and swing at Brodie with her staff and get nothing but a couple of cheese out of it. Now, does she have any defensive ability? She has Fortify. All mice on the same tile as this mouse add 1 to their defense until this mouse's next turn. I am most definitely going to spend the 2 cheese I just got on that. So she is going to spend 2 cheese on Fortify. Now everybody's got +1 to their defense until we come back around to Tilda. It is now Brodie Chases. The way Brodie Chases works is he rolls 2 dice, and he adds the numbers on those dice, and he moves that number of spaces from one mouse to the next closest mouse to the next closest mouse, and winds up attacking any and all mice that he has shared a space with, including the one he started on. So he's on Colin. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, there was a decent chance he was only going to roll a 4 and couldn't have reached Filch, but he did. So we're going to roll a single 3-die attack and see how much damage he's doing. And it's only 1 hit. And again, cheese from Brodie does not go on the wheel, whether in attack or defense. So each of these mice is rolling versus just a 1-hit attack, and they all have +1 to their defense. So Colin is rolling 3 defense, and he blocks. Tilda's rolling 4 defense. She does block, and she gains 2 cheese. So there's the cheese she spent before, right back to her. Filch is rolling 3 defense, and he's blocking the attack as well. We come to Maginos, who I think we all know is going to start by meepsing this bad boy. And what's nice about meeps is it does follow the enemy, as we clarified earlier, but it also it sticks to the figure, not the card. And as a result, I believe it applies to either Brodie card that you want. So they're now rolling 3 defense instead of 4. And he's going to hope that his Scorching Wand will pay him some dividends here. So he gains 4 cheese in virtue of rolling 2, but he hits only once, versus Brodie's now 3 defense. And that would have been nasty if Brodie added cheese to the wheel, but Brodie rolled no shields whatsoever, and therefore Maginos has taken out the Brodie Chases card. Now I could have targeted the Pounces card, which is coming next, but again, the Chases card is by far the most dangerous of the 2, so I'm just going to target that one right there. And that's Maginos' turn. Good job. We come to Colin, who I think is going to pile in 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's worth noting with Brodie Chases off of the list here, we only have to worry about Brodie Pounces, which means I don't need to worry about scattering distance-wise. I just have to not share spaces to minimize his damage. But Colin is rolling 4 attack dice now versus 3 defense. Those are pretty good odds. He gains another cheese, and Brodie needs to block 2 hits with his 3 defense dice, which he does, unfortunately. Okay, Brodie stands tall. Brodie pounces. I believe the rule on this is he pounces on the closest. He pounces on the space that has the most figures in it, and after that, I believe initiative is the tiebreaker. Let me double check that though. Let me bounce over to the rule book and make 100% sure on that. And yes, indeed, here we are in black and white. When Brodie pounces, choose the space on the room tile that has the most figures on it, minions included, and move Brodie onto that space. If more than one space has an equal number of figures on it, Brodie will pounce on the space that contains the figure whose initiative card is highest on the initiative track. Roll once for the pounce's initiative card. Each figure in that space must defend against the same attack separately. Brodie will pounce on the space he is already on if it contains the most figures, or if no other spaces have figures on them. So once again, he is pouncing on the space that has the most figures. There are 4 that are tied, so the tiebreaker is initiative. So he goes here, and unlike Brodie Chases, it doesn't attack the space that he's coming from. It's just the one that he's going to, because he could be teleporting across the map doing that. All right, so he gets a 3-die attack versus Tilda. He hits only once versus her 4 defense dice. She blocks the crap out of it, and that is Brodie's turn. It's now Filch's turn to go, and I think he's going to fire his bow. See what he can do. And all he does, unfortunately, is get a cheese. And I got 4 people who can, or 3 other people who can go after him, so I'm not going to worry about energy rush or anything like that right now. We'll bounce up to Tilda, who will swing away. Hitting for 3. Now, Fortify has gone away. But she's hitting twice versus Brodie's still 3 defense. And he doesn't block any of them. So Tilda has taken out Brodie. And that is the victory condition for the map. Now, one thing, again, that's kind of interesting for this chapter is, what if 1 or 2 of those roaches was still scurrying around in this room? How would the victory condition go? Because, again, the victory states once Brodie's defeated, not once he's defeated and the room is cleared, which in other chapters it's been very explicit about. So you could read that as an error or an oversight or something, but it seems like, as written, as soon as you kill Brodie, you win. So let's kind of bounce back to the rule book here, not the rule book, but the chapter book, and see what happens. Basically, as a result of this, you get a little bit of flavor text, and essentially what happens is, you've defeated Brodie, you actually take his claw as a trophy, and you threaten him. You basically say, not in along the same lines as, like, you're my bitch or anything, but you have kind of taught him a lesson. You've taught him to be wary of you and kind of reckon with you a little bit, and then you basically say, by the way, we know where you can have a little bit of catnip. So when we call, you better come. You come running. Brodie kind of slinks off, but he's like, ooh, catnip, sounds good. And so he's kind of, I guess the point of this chapter is, you've gotten a kind of a loose agreement with Brodie that when you need him to show up somewhere, you call him and he's going to come on the promise of a little bit of catnip. So that's pretty much it. And that was a quick chapter. We have wound up victorious on the 3rd tile. We didn't have to bounce over into the kitchen or the alchemist chamber. And yeah, that's pretty much all she wrote. Cool deal. We didn't pick up any items or anything like that, but everyone in this party has more or less the items that we want. And yeah, all that's really left is to reckon with cheese. And I do have a fair bit of cheese sitting here. I've got 11 plus another 12 cheese, so that's 23 cheese. That's enough for 3 levels and almost 4. But here's the thing. On an earlier chapter, I, after viewing the video that I put out, I believe that there was a chapter where I neglected to take away some cheese at one point, and it was something on the order of 4 cheese. And it made a difference at the end of the game whether or not I was going to level up. So for a couple of chapters now, I've had 1 additional ability that I was not entitled to, if you want to put it that way. And so as a way of penalizing myself to kind of level that playing field, I'm just not going to take any levels here. I'm not going to level up at all. So in virtue of the fact that I got an extra ability early, I'm just not going to take 3 abilities now. And I'll pretty much call that fair, especially since I got out of this chapter kind of on the easy side. I didn't lose any items or anything like that. I didn't gain anything, but I didn't really need anything with these guys either. So I'm in pretty good shape. I'm not super worried about it, and I'm just going to try to keep this as fair as possible. So yeah, by way of kind of balancing the score sheet, the ledger, as it were, I'm going to go ahead and call that the end of this chapter. So we have emerged victorious. The mice, the heroes that they are. It should be no surprise to any of us that they've emerged victorious. And yeah, like I said, it just it's one of these chapters where you can get lucky and it can end really early, or it can drag on and go, far longer. We were in pretty good shape time-wise, even if it had gone all the way to the alchemist chamber. The only thing that's scary about it is you deliver, unless you get the dinner fork and ring the bell up here, you deliberately need to try to trigger surges to draw from the boss deck. And then if you got versed or skitterclack and that battle doesn't go well, they could have some surges for you. Like I said, I think when you get the brush, you tick that up to 7, so I still have 5 pages to play with. But if I'm giving away another 2 automatically, that starts to get a little bit hairy, a little dicey. And I did have pretty good luck to this point so far. So this can be a tough chapter, potentially. But that's true of all of them, pretty much. It is a game where luck either goes for you or against you, for sure. But as you can see in that last room, knowing what I was doing, knowing that I had Brodie coming, I stacked the deck so that if Brodie appeared, I was ready for him by being positioned the way I needed to be. And then even if it wasn't him, if it was somebody else, I was in a pretty good position. And then I could have done the same thing and summoned him because I happened to get that summon cat scroll. So, it's not like there isn't also strategy that you can use when the luck is in your favor to the point where it does allow for it. So there are strokes of bad fortune that you really can't overcome, but there certainly are a lot of opportunities for strategizing to improve your odds pretty significantly in this game, which is why I think it's a really nice game. All right. Well, anyway, lecture over. We kicked butt on this one. It was a really quick fight. And I guess we'll be bopping off to Chapter 6 and see what it is that Maginos has planned for Brodie. Why did we go to all this trouble? What exactly is it that Maginos wants Brodie to do for us? That's something we will learn next time. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. And I guess we'll see you next time. Fight true, brave mice. And I'll catch you on the flip side. Take care.